Welcome to Pyramid Knits. My name is Liz. I am a knitter and a natural dyer. I am the dyer behind Pyramid Dye Works. You can find me on Etsy and Instagram as Pyramid Dye Works. I am coming to you today from my home just outside of Taos, New Mexico. It is very, very snowy outside today. I think it is very, very snowy across most of the United States. I am down in the southwestern part at the very southern end of the Rocky Mountains. And yeah, I'm looking out the window to just like a lot of snow. I think we've probably gotten at least a foot so far, and it's still supposed to snow for the rest of the day. So I am sitting here next to my wood stove that is going. I've got my nice hand knit wool sweater on. And I have a lot of things to share with you today. I have been very busy over the last month or so, doing lots of crafty goodness. So yeah, let's talk about some fiber. So what I'm wearing, this is a pattern from Alicia Plumer. It's called In Stillness. The yarn that I used is Juniper Moon Moonshine, and it is a single ply worsted weight. And it's a blend of wool, alpaca, and silk. It's not generally advised to knit garments or anything that's going to get a lot of wear out of a single ply because it's just not as strong. It won't last as long. And I knew that going into this, but it was just like such a soft, luscious yarn. I just couldn't help myself. The colorway is Hunter Green. I did actually just depill this a little bit yesterday, but you can still see there's quite a bit of pilling here under the arms, and that's just the nature of the single ply. So yeah, I'm often pulling off little nubbins from under the arms of the sweater, but it's so soft. I can wear it next to skin. It doesn't bother me at all. I love this pattern that it's just got this little texture detail at the top, but otherwise it's just a plain succulent sweater. I find that I wear it a lot. So today I do have a lot of things to share with you. I have some FOs, I've got whips, I've got spinning, I've got knitting, crochet, I have natural dyes. I have cross stitch. Yeah, I've got a lot of stuff to talk about today, and also some fun life stuff at the end that is marginally fiber related. So let's talk about FOs. I don't have this one with me. It has been mailed off and gifted. It was the minimal cable cardigan. And I used, the yarn I used was Universal Deluxe DK Tweed in the colorway Pine. Yeah, it's this lovely tweed yarn, DK weight, obviously, DK tweed. I really enjoyed knitting with it. It is a superwash yarn, but it doesn't feel really super washy to me. It was really lovely to knit with. Looks great with cables. Yeah, and I actually really enjoyed doing this knit, even though it wasn't for me. It did take me a long time since it wasn't for me. It took about 2 years to finally finish this project. It definitely went into hibernation a few times, and yeah. But it's done, and it is off to its recipient. The recipient was very happy with it. I did do some modifications to the pattern. I added, well, it was bottom up, so I added decreases through the body to make it an A-line shape so that it would fit my friend better to her actual body shape. I also shortened the sleeves a little bit. I kind of guessed on that because she's not here. She lives in a different state from me. So I was just kind of trying it on, and she is 5 or 6 inches shorter than me. So I was knitting the sleeves to pattern, and they were actually long on me. So I ended up ripping back a few inches and just making the sleeves a little bit shorter. And it seems like that was a good call. I also added pockets to the sweater. My friend did request pockets. She's got 2 little kids, so she needs to like pick stuff up and stuff them in her pockets all the time. So I obliged. I basically went in and did it like an afterthought heel. So I picked where I wanted the pockets. I ran my needle through 1 row of stitches, which was super difficult to do in pattern because I was going through like textured stitches and a cable. And then I skipped a row, and then, so 2 rows below that row, I ran the other needle through a line of stitches. And then I went and snipped the row in the middle, right in the middle, and unraveled on my way out, and definitely found that I had like been off by a row in a few spots because it's really hard to follow that line of stitches after it's already been knitted, especially when it's in pattern. I have done this before with sweaters in stockinette whenever I needed to fix something, where I would thread the needle through to, get the stitches secure wherever I needed that, and then unravel to that point. And inevitably, I always end up offset a little bit. I'll skip to a different row for 5 or 6 stitches and then kind of come back. It's really quite difficult to actually follow that row all the way across. So I had a little bit of difficulty with that, but it was fine. I was able to pick everything up as I went and adjust things. Just a little fiddly. And yeah, on the last episode, I believe I showed you guys that my first pocket I knit it on upside down. So I had the top ribbing of the pocket was actually coming down off the top of the sweater instead of coming up over the pocket. So I did have to rip that out and redo it. And then I sewed up some pockets with some cute fabric I got from Joann. It was a little fat quarter that just seemed like it was perfect for this project, so I grabbed it. And I just put my hand on a piece of paper, traced my hand, said, okay, I want the pocket to be about this big. I added my seam allowances, and I decided to go ahead and do French seams on the pocket so they were nice and secure and I wouldn't have any raw edges. So I'm not a great sewer. I'm definitely a beginner sewist. But I have done French seams before, so I'm like, I know how to do a fancy thing. Let's do a fancy thing. So basically with French seams, you sew your pieces together with the wrong sides together first. Normally with sewing, the wrong sides together first. Is that right? Wrong sides together first. There you go. When normally you sew with your right sides together. So first you sew the pocket with the wrong sides together. Then you flip it inside out and you sew the seams again with the wrong sides together. The right sides together. I'm not good at sewing. I often do things backwards in sewing. I just have a hard time like visualizing what exactly is supposed to happen. I don't know if you guys have that problem too. Knitting is a very linear activity, where sewing is quite a bit more abstract and geometrical, which is a little bit harder for the slow brain to wrap around. Anywho, so basically what that does is it encases your raw edge within the seam. So there's no raw edges. It's extra sturdy. I was super proud of it. I did have to redo the pockets once because I didn't sew the parts together in the right order and it didn't work. Not a good sewer. So once the pockets were done and correct, I went in and I just whip stitched them into the pocket opening that I had made on the cardigan. And then I was done. And I sent it off to my friend. And I was so excited that she finally got it. And she sent me a picture of her wearing the sweater. And I was like, oh my gosh, it fits. I'm so excited that it fits so well. And then a little bit later in the evening, I went back and I was looking at her picture just to like assure myself that yes, it does actually fit well. You did good on your math. And I noticed something a little bit off. And I thought, why do her pockets look lopsided? And then I looked a little closer and I said, oh my God. I did not put the pockets in the same place. One is higher up than the other one. There's 3 cables underneath this pocket and 2 cables underneath this pocket. Like, how did I even? I was so stressed out about cutting into the sweater that I just totally missed that I didn't even put them in the right spot. Oh, no. Oh, and after 2 years and trying so hard and like, I was so proud of my seaming on this project. It was knit in pieces and then seamed together. And I was so proud of my seaming. Like, it looked so good. All the details were just lovely. And then I put the pockets on lopsided. So maybe I'll fix that. Maybe I won't. I told her I would fix it. I told her, like, wear the sweater for the rest of the winter and like this summer, send it back to me and I'll fix it. We'll see if she goes for that or just says, whatever, the pockets can be in different spots. I'm just so mad at myself though, because I really tried so hard to like make that a really nice sweater and like high quality craftsmanship. And I put the pockets in the wrong spot. So there you go. And that brings me to talk about how knitting is a great lesson in Zen and in letting things go. I remember whenever I was very first starting to knit, my partner at the time, his mother knit and his grandmother knit and crocheted. And he said, you know, I remember growing up, like I've seen so many times my mom just like ripping things back, just ripping the yarn out. And I was just like a brand new knitter and I was like, oh my God, I cannot imagine like ripping something out. You know, I don't know if I'm cut out for this knitting thing. Like, that sounds like a lot of work to just like have to tear something out. And he was like, no, it's like, it's a practice in Zen. And I'm like, okay, I don't remember that. Yeah, so this was definitely one of those moments where I was like, okay, this is a practice in Zen. This is a practice in letting go. Like, you messed it up and that's okay. That's okay. Just let it go. I will fix it if I have the opportunity, but just take a deep breath and let it go and say, whatever. Everybody makes mistakes. It's a really stupid mistake, but everybody makes mistakes. It's handmade. It's just the nature of the beast, right? I mean, heck, even whenever you buy stuff from the store, sometimes things are like lopsided or wonky or whatever. Because, you know, also handmade. Yeah. So I've been trying to let that go and say, you know what? It doesn't matter that you have been knitting every single day of your life for like the last 12 years, essentially. I've definitely had some like no mojo times, which is like low or no knitting for a few weeks. But I think you could probably say on average, I've knit for an hour a day for the last 12 years, every day. And I still put the pockets in offset. So, yeah. So don't, you know, beat yourself up if you make a mistake. We all make mistakes. It still works. It's still a cardigan that works and it fits. Just a little lopsided on those pockets. Yeah. So I have another FO that I also don't have here to show you. And also is requiring a large amount of Zen. I knit a custom dog sweater for a friend of mine who adopted a Chihuahua who was a rescue dog, and before she adopted him had broken its leg. So she was having trouble getting the dog like into clothes and things, which it's a Chihuahua, so like it has to wear clothes, right? Because one, it's cute, and two, it's very thin and spindly, and it's snowing and cold outside, so the dog needs a sweater, right? So I took a pattern, which is the, oh gosh, custom fit dog sweater, I think is what it's called. And I used that to help me sort of get my calculations. But then I changed it so that it wasn't like a pullover sweater onto the dog. I changed it into a cardigan. And I changed it into a cardigan that the dog could step into, and then it buttoned on the back. So that it was easier to get the clothes onto the dog. It was easier for her to button the clothes onto the dog. And it was super freaking cute. Super freaking cute. And I used a real nice yarn that I had in my stash forever from Nitpicks. I'm pretty sure it's a discontinued base at this point. But it was like a wool alpaca blend and this rusty orange. And it was so cute. It was so cute. And I was going to give that to her for Christmas. I didn't see her before Christmas. I was going to go by her office one day, but she wasn't there. And then like I wasn't in town the next day. And then like the next day she's like, oh no, I have COVID. So she was out of commission for a couple of weeks. So I finally went by her shop again the other day to drop off her dog sweater. And I went into the back of my car and said, where is the box? Where is it? Where is the wrapped box that has her dog sweater in it? My father was trying to be helpful last weekend, and he cleaned out my car for me. Yes. And I had a wrapped box in the backseat of my car with the label on it, to Sarah from Liz. And to be fair, one of my dogs had stepped on the box whenever it was in the car, so the wrapping was ripped. But yeah, my dad just assumed that it was trash, and he threw the whole thing away. He just threw the box away with the sweater in it. And yeah, it's gone. It's in the landfill. And that's taken a lot of zen. It's taken a lot of zen. I mean, it was a small project, like, thankfully, I guess. But, like, I put a lot of brain power into that. And, like, I thought about it for a long time because I was like, how can I make this easier for this dog who's having these issues, like getting its feet through things because it had this broken leg? And, you know, I really put a lot of thought into it and a lot of care into it. And it was custom made. And, it just breaks my heart. Breaks my heart. So that's gone, never to be seen again. Maybe I'll try to find my notes to remember what I did. But I don't know that those are around anywhere at this point. So yeah, that's a bummer. That's a big bummer. Moving on, I have one more FO, and it's sewing, which is strange. I had started making this like a long time ago. I may have showed it on some podcast at some point in the past. I don't even know. But I went rogue with the sewing, and I made a quilted pillow for my couch. Yeah, so again, this is like fat quarters from Joanne. I just cut them into half square triangles and made a little pattern. There you go. And then I had this pink gingham in my stash that I bought just like forever ago at an antique shop in Centralia, Washington. That I was like, oh, that's a perfect pink to sort of match. I'll use that as my backing fabric. Once I had pieced together this quilt top, I laid it up against the pillow and I was like, oh yeah, I need like an extra inch around to like finish it out. So I had the hardest time, again, mentally with the geometry, trying to figure out how to make a 1-inch border around this quilt top. Finally got it. Sewed on the back. Put the pillow in it, and I'm like, oh, it's too big. It didn't need that edging at all. It would have been fine if I just did not do that gingham edging. So that's kind of annoying. But, you know, this project was totally just a confidence builder project for me because I don't really know what I'm doing with sewing. I've never quilted anything. Like, I just kind of got the inspiration one day and just started cutting up the fabric and started sewing it together. And I didn't know what I was doing or what I was going to do with it. And it just evolved into this. So, you know, I have another pillow with a cover on it on my couch, which is nice. It doesn't really fit that well, and it's really messy. But whatever. Yeah, so now I've got 2 patterned pillows on my couch that I think match quite well. I've got a succulent theme going on. And sage green and orange is kind of like my color scheme, if I have a color scheme in here. I don't. Vaguely. Well, that's all of my FOs for today. So moving on to whips. What's my first whip? Oh, my first whip I'm going to show you. I did show you guys this last time. It is the Festive Yolk Pullover by Skandir. And I am knitting it out of Nitpicks Wool of the Andes, Sport Weight, in Aurora Heather and Oyster Heather. And I cast this on, oh gosh, I don't know, probably a week before Christmas or something. And I knit on it through New Year's. And let's see, I don't know which side's the back. I think the back's over here. Anyway, here we go. I made some good progress on it. I made it all the way through the yoke. So this is a nice little festive Christmas wintry jumper. I have switched out some of the charts. I really like this pattern because there's alternate charts that you can choose from at the end, so you can kind of like mix and match and make your own, really make the sweater your own. I had actually switched the patterns because my row gauge was quite a bit longer than the pattern recommended, so I was afraid the yoke was going to be too deep. So I tried to pick a, one of the pattern repeats that was shorter in height. But in the end, it ended up being the same length that it would have been anyway. Because I really wanted to put the trees on the yoke, on the top of the yoke part. So whatever. I think it's going to be fine. So yeah, this is my nice Christmas sweater for 2022. This is going to go into hibernation now, and I will pull it back out probably after Thanksgiving. But I'm done with the yoke. The next row is the sleeve divide. So like it's a really good place to put it down. So whenever I get back to it, I can just go ahead and divide the sleeves, knit the body, knit the sleeves, and I'm done. Yay! And I'll have a lovely, lovely Christmas sweater. I'm very excited about this. Super fun to knit, super fun, super addictive. Like, it's all pretty easy color work. On these trees, there are some slightly longer floats, but most of the time, you know, it's just a couple of stitches, 3 stitches or something. So you're not really having to think about catching your floats too much, and you can really just fly through it. Really enjoying it. Can't wait until next Thanksgiving so I can bring this out again. So my next whip is also a pattern from Skandir. It is the Sweater Hug. And I am making this out of, oops, that's inside out. Out of La Bien-Aimée DK. It's a superwash DK in the colorway Grello. Look at that. Isn't it just gorgeous? Oh, such a nice color. Yeah, so this is a really lovely sort of basic sweater pattern. It's all stockinette, ribbing on the edges. It has a split hem, drop shoulder. Yeah. Yeah, so what can I say about this? I cast this on New Year's Day. So this was my New Year's cast on, which replaced my other Skein pattern, which is the Christmas pattern, which will come back next year. So I cast this on New Year's Day. I am just almost done with the stockinette on the body, I think. According to the pattern, I really only have a few more rows to go. And then I think there's a pretty long ribbing at the bottom, like 3 inches or more, I think. And I am debating if I should knit this a little bit longer. I don't have a ton of yarn. Like I'm playing a little bit of chicken here with the yardage that I have. But I also really quite enjoy 3/4 length sleeves on a sweater. So if these don't get full sleeves, I'm going to be totally fine with that. I find that I tend to wear those more often because they're a lot better for if I'm at home and it's just a little bit cool. I'm not going outside. I'm not out in the snow. And it's nice to be able to let my arms breathe a little bit. So I also don't love cropped things, cropped sweaters. I feel I get pretty limited in what I can wear it with. You know, it has to be like a dress or high-waisted jeans or something. Even with like a high-waisted jean or like a high-waisted skirt, sometimes you still see in between. Yeah, not really my scene. Anyway, so I was debating if I should knit this a little bit longer. But then I was watching Andrea Mowry's podcast, which is I'll Knit or Spin If I Want to, last week. And somebody had written in asking about gauge issues. And anyway, she was talking about specifically indie dyed superwash yarns that are worsted spun and how heavy they can be. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm knitting a sweater out of a DK weight, indie dyed, worsted spun yarn, and it is quite heavy. This yarn actually comes in 115 gram skeins, not 100 gram skeins. So it's significantly heavier than a lot of the DK yarns are going to come across. And Andrea was saying that with superwash already tends to grow. And then especially whenever you have these heavier yarns and you're doing a sweater garment, they really will tend to grow down, and gravity will have a significant effect on the length. So then I thought, well, maybe I don't want to knit anything extra in the length. If I want it a little bit longer, just trust that your yarn will make it a little bit longer. The recommended yarn that Skander used, I believe, was like a rustic woolen spun yarn. So it's a lot lighter, a lot airier. It's not going to have that heavy drape. So yeah, I'm a little bit on the fence about how far I should go with the body. If you guys have any experience with La Bien Amie, or, you know, generally superwash, heavier weight, yarns in a sweater, do let me know, because I can't decide what to do. Yes, modifications to this pattern. I have made a couple of modifications. I don't particularly like a tight neck on my sweaters. I mean, as you can see, like I love a good boat neck. And from the pattern pictures, this looked like it was going to be a pretty close neck. There's a nice chunk of ribbing that goes around the neckband. And so what I did is I kept the same number to cast on all the way across the shoulders, but I had like all the way across the length across the top of the shoulders, if this is making sense. But I put more stitches into the neck opening and less stitches onto the shoulder. So it should be a little bit wider. I can't remember exactly how many. I want to say just like maybe 4 or 5 stitches on each side. So it'll make it an inch or 2 wider overall. And then also I can knit the ribbing a little bit shorter if I don't want it to like be right up on my neck. Which with this yarn, I mean, there is 0 prickle. It's 100% merino. It's superwash. I mean, it's like this. You can just wear it next to skin, you know. So it's not an issue of the prickliness around my neck, just in general, I don't like crew necks so much. So that's one modification I did. The other modification is that, without giving too much away about the pattern, because it is a paid for pattern, it's supposed to fit pretty relaxed through the body, and then the sleeves, it looks like are pretty much 0 ease in the pattern, or just a tiny bit of ease. So I have pretty broad shoulders and pretty wide, large circumference biceps, however you want to phrase that. I've always had a problem with store-bought garments that tend to get really tight across the shoulders. I also have a pretty large bust, which, you know, they're like proportional to each other, but not so much the rest of my body. So often if I get something that fits in the, you know, waist area, it's going to be really tight up here. If I get something that, you know, gives me room to move my shoulders, it's going to be like a bag on the rest of my body. So in order to counteract this in this sweater, because I was worried that with the tighter sleeves, it was just going to be like way too tight. And I was kind of going through the pattern before I started knitting. It's something I do before I start any sweater pattern. I read through the entire pattern. I highlight the numbers that I need. If I'm making any adjustments, I write in the numbers. I do all of my math at once. You know, so like with making this neckline wider, you know, I would scribble out and do 5 stitches less, whatever it was. So as I was going through and kind of trying to figure it out, I'm like, okay, how can I add a little bit of space to this shoulder bust region? Like, do I want to do short rows? Do I want to start with a bigger size sleeve at top and like taper down? But then I was like, well, the arm opening itself is kind of going to be the issue. I'm not going to have enough space to pick up enough stitches if I'm following the length of the body and of the yoke in the pattern, which I did hit gauge perfectly. Stitches and row. No, that's not right. I hit my row gauge perfectly. My stitch gauge was a little off. So it's like, I know it's going to end up the length that the pattern recommends, but I'm only going to have so many stitches to pick up stitches. So I'm limited by how many stitches I have in the depth of my yoke, right? So I was like, okay, so I need to make more stitches around the sleeve. How am I going to do that? So what I ended up doing is I decided to add extra stitches at the underarm and do an underarm gusset. So I can show you here. I just added these extra stitches across the underside of the sleeve, and I did a decrease, I believe, every 3 rows until I got back down to my original stitch count. So it's just like an inch or 2 deep. I have not decided if I'm going to do an underarm gusset on the sleeve as well to mirror this, or if I'll just do extra decreases going down the sleeve. Haven't decided on that one yet, but I am quite happy with my little gusset. It was one of those times whenever I was going through the pattern, I was trying to think, how do I do this? How do I do this? I just want like more space and then take it away really quickly. And I was like, what if I do this and then I just decrease? And I was like, oh, that's what a gusset is. I get it now. So yeah, I may do the gusset on the sleeve as well. I don't know. I'll probably do some more measuring before I decide on that exactly. If I think I really just need that extra space in the shoulder to be able to move my shoulder around, or if I really think my bicep is too large for the way the pattern is written, then I may just stick with consistent decreases throughout to have it be more of a gradual tapering. So yeah, that's my other fun one there. I am alternating skeins with this since it is a hand-dyed yarn and it is quite variegated. I'm using the helical knitting method, which if you have not tried that and you're doing anything with an indie dyed yarn or something with a lot of variegation that you want to sort of blend in more, it's a fantastic tool. Definitely give it a Google. Yeah. Conan's come for a nice little visit. I'm probably turning bright red, like I can feel it on my face. I'm sitting right next to my wood stove and it has kind of gone out a little bit now, but those coals are still burning and that thing is pumping off some heat. So yeah, this is a good spot for kitties, huh? Oh, damn. Okay, so my other whip, not my only other whip, but another whip. I showed this last time too. I mean, there's not much to write home about. I've added some length to it. This is a pillowcase I'm making out of hand spun that is also going to go on my couch. I'm just doing garter stitch, you know, 2 rows in each color, so I get these nice little stripes. This fiber is from Harrisville Designs. It's Peace Fleece, which is Rambouillet and mohair, I believe. And yeah, I spun this chain plied. It was woolen prep and long draw woolen spun. So it's quite wonky with my thicknesses. So there's a lot of texture going on in here. These were my first chain plied yarns that I had made, so they're definitely a little wonky. But I love texture, so that's fine. Yeah, so I just need to keep putting stripes on this until it's long enough to fit over my pillow. And then I will finally have pillowcases for all of the pillows on my couch. And the colorways of the Peace Fleece is Wood Smoke is this blue, and Desert Tundra is the neutral. Yes. I have a new pair of Zoom socks. Ta-da! This is Nitpicks Felici, or Felici, I'm not sure which way you pronounce it. The colorway is Beatnik. I am just doing a simple toe-up sock with a 3x1 ribbing on the top of the foot and also around the leg. I did a German short row heel. I am knitting these on needles that I absolutely hate. These are old needles that I got from Nitpicks. They're actually a size US 1.5, and they are wooden needles. I usually knit my socks on a US size 1 and metal needles. I am a huge fan of the Chiaogu red lace needles. Their cable is super flexible, not like this thing that just like falls in on itself all the time. The metal is so nice and smooth, not like these wooden needles where it keeps getting stuck on things. And if my hands are like slightly warm, it's just like glue. But I am using these because my little kitten, not that one, that's my big cat, my little kitten, who is, oh gosh, 5 or 6 months old now. Time. She chewed on the cord on my chow goose. She didn't chew through the cord because it's got a metal core, but she chewed up the plastic coating on it, or the rubber coating on it, whatever it is. So there's all these little nicks in it, and you can't slide the yarn across. It gets stuck. So those sock needles are ruined. And I needed to cast on some new Zoom socks, so I had brought out these old needles. And I'm really not enjoying using them. I really need to get some new Chow Goose sock needles. Unfortunately, I do not have a local yarn shop that carries them. I will need to buy those online, most likely. Yeah, I don't even know that the yarn shop in Santa Fe carries them either. And that's like an hour and a half away from me. So yeah, I just need to order some new needles online. But yeah, these are my Zoom socks, so I knit on these during Zoom meetings. Do you have a Zoom project? Yeah, I find it pretty easy to not have to look down at this. Every once in a while I glance down. Nobody's ever said anything. It is a fun sort of stealthy thing to, be sitting there knitting, and it's like nobody knows that I'm doing this. Nobody knows that I'm making progress on my socks right now. This is so exciting. So yeah, getting, progress done on this. This is the first sock, so I still have one more to go. Big fan of Nitpicks Felici as well. I have not had any issues with it in the past. I know some people have said that like it wears out fast, I think, but I have not experienced that. My very first pair of socks that I ever knit was out of Felici, and they lasted legit like 10 years. And I wore them, they were in regular rotation in the winter, so they would get worn 1 or 2 times a week in the winter for 10 years. And they finally wore through it, just like to the point that I don't think it's really worth fixing them. But yeah, I don't have any other Felici socks in my wardrobe, so getting some now. Oh. I've also been working on my granny stripe blanket, which I neglected to bring over here. And I see, as I'm looking over at my couch, that my dog is very sound asleep on said blanket. So I'll try and just grab a shot of that later. I've been adding some rows to it. It's getting bigger. It's still not big enough to go on the bed. I'm intending for it to be like a queen size throw. However, this is my very first crochet project. I taught myself how to crochet to start making this, and my gauge has changed. Whenever you hold the blanket up, like it definitely kind of like tapers in a little bit, because my gauge has gotten a lot looser from whenever I first started, and I was like, okay, I'm crocheting, and now I'm just like, oh, I'm crocheting. And I'm pretty sure I added a couple extra stitches in there a couple of times on accident. So yeah, it's a little bit tapery, which is kind of a bummer, but that's okay. I'm just using all of my scraps. I'm trying to go through kind of like a rainbow color scheme-ish. So each time I get to a new color, I say, okay, what's the next color in the rainbow? And I pick a color that's close to that, looks like it blends with the previous color, and just go from there. And I do have to say, like, crochet is heavy. Like, it's a physically thick stitch. So whenever you have this big blanket with all of these yarns in it, it's a physically heavy blanket. And I have found that if I'm on my couch and I'm watching TV, if I grab that blanket, 100% I'm falling asleep on the couch. 100%. There's no way I'm staying awake if I get underneath that thing. There's zero. It's like a weighted blanket. cats are knocking things. What you doing, Conan? Knocking shit down. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's getting anything. He's trying to get up onto the highest shelf, I think because it's the warmest up there, because heat rises, you know. Okay, is that all of my whips? I think that's all of my whips. Okay, I lied. I have one more whip. I showed this last time too. It's another Christmas project. I started doing some cross stitch. Why? I don't know. I felt inspired. So I bought a little set of these sort of wintry, Christmassy, festive patterns off of Etsy. And here I go. It's filling in. It's super fun. It's super freaking cute. I just love it so much. It's like the most adorable thing. Yeah, clipping along. I have run out of the navy thread, so I'm going to have to pick some more of that up at some point. But basically, I've been working on this flower over here. There's a bear that fits down here. And then I have like this whole quadrant that I haven't even touched. So yeah, it's taken a while, but it is very comforting to work on. I love, again, the texture and just being able to feel these stitches. It's so nice. It's so much fun. Yeah. So I figure I will keep working on this through the winter because it's not necessarily Christmassy. It's a little wintry, you know. I mean, there's trees with like lights on them and a reindeer with like a little red bell collar, but you know, there's like a chicken and some trees and houses and things. So and there's going to be a big red bear at the bottom. So yeah, I'll keep on working on this thing through the winter, and hopefully I can finish it. And then I've got a bunch more of these patterns to work on too. So I don't know, this may just be like I'm perpetually in the background working on Christmas cross stitches. But you know what? There's worse things. So super fun new craft. Spinning. Oh my gosh, you guys. Spinning. I'll show you my finished spins first. I just wound these off and soaked them yesterday. So first up, I've got this thingy, and this is a sample of some of my naturally dyed roving. And this was some of the first roving that I dyed. It's the first naturally dyed roving that I spun. It's not a very good spin. You can see that it's quite uneven. Yeah, one of the plies I spun up quite a bit before the other one, so one of them's like a lot looser than the second one. I wasn't even really planning on plying these together, but I just kind of ended up with the blue, and then the other one is kind of like green with yellow, I think, or maybe it's blue with yellow and green. I think it's blue with yellow and green. Blue with yellow is one ply and green is the other ply. And the green is actually made not by dyeing green, but just by blending this blue and yellow together repeatedly until it made its own color. So yeah, there's not much yardage in this. I don't know what I would call this, probably a sport or a DK or a worsted. A DK or a worsted maybe. Let's see, I wrote down, yeah, I got 50 yards out of this. And the dyes that I used were indigo and chamisa. Chamisa is also known as rabbit brush. You may know it by that name. Everybody out here calls it chamisa. So yeah, this was just a fun little test experiment, just playing around with things. So I wasn't really aiming for anything specific. I don't know what, if anything, I'll use this for. Maybe it will go into my granny stripe. But it is so satisfying to make yarn, right? It is. My other finished spin is fiber that I bought at the Taos Wool Fest last year. Oh, I forget off the top of my head what the name of the company is. I will put it down below or up above or to the side or wherever it is. And this is recycled wool and soy silk. And it's a artificial silk that is made from the byproduct of tofu making, which is the soy silk. It feels pretty nice. It's this nice like mauve-y pink, and then it's like a gray green that were just kind of blended together. I did this also as a 2-ply. I ended up with 176 yards here. I'm not sure the weight. I did not weigh it yet. But I would say this is probably like a fingering to a sport weight. Yeah, and I'm pretty happy with that. It's not the most even thing in the world, but it looks pretty good. I have no idea what I'm going to make out of it. Given that I only have 176 yards, I mean, I don't know what I could make out of it. Color work, contrasting color, something like that. Not sure. But I wanted to test this out because I never heard of soy silk before, and I thought, oh, that sounds like fun. And the name of the colorway as well is parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. So I couldn't resist. So yeah, very happy with this. Don't know what I'm gonna do with it. If you have any suggestions. Yeah, okay, so spinning. One more spinning. So this is a fun one. I have been sharing this on my Instagram, so if you follow me there, you may have seen this in progress. I wanted to do a yarn naturally dyed from start to finish, like from the sheep, basically. So I have a lot of raw fleece, and I could not come up with a color scheme. Like I was just getting stuck with too many options. Do you know what I mean? So what I ended up going with, and I mentioned that I was just in love with these little stitch markers on my last podcast, that I just really loved the color scheme, and I wanted to do like a Fair Isle knit with this kind of a color scheme. And then I was like, wait, why don't I do my yarn with this kind of a color scheme? Can you see that? Super simple. This is a stitch marker from Native Knitter. Just a little beaded stitch marker, but I don't know, I just love the colors. It's like all of my colors. Black, white, yellow, orange, red, and blue. Very, very pretty. Very Southwestern. Yeah, so I thought, well, why don't I just make this be my color inspiration for my spin? So it became the color inspiration for my spin. So I have both of my plies done now. Check it out. Very cool. You can't see all of the colors in here, but you know, some of them are hidden underneath. So I need to ply these together. So what I did was, for the black, this is natural alpaca, is the black. For the white, you can't really see too much. There's a little bit showing up in here. That is the natural, also natural undyed for the white, which is from a CVM fleece that I have, which is California Variegated Mutant. Quite lovely. Nice little staple, good crimp. And then the rest of it has been dyed out of the CVM. So the yellow is... the yellow is chamisa. The blue is indigo. Okay, take that back. The blue is indigo. The yellow is chamisa. The orange is marigold. And the red is madder with Osage orange. And the red turned out a bit more orange than I wanted. I was actually going to put it back into a matter dye bath to try and get a little bit of the yellow out of it after I had put it in with the Osage orange. But then I put all of the fleeces together, all of the dyed fleeces together, and I was like, this actually looks really nice with the yellow and the bright orange that I already have. It's kind of like a brick red orange. It felt very earthy, very adobe. So I just decided to keep it the way it is. Instead of trying to get like a really vibrant red, it really felt kind of like a sunset to me. This yellow, orange, red combination, which, I mean, that's what you want, right? You want things to look like the sunset. So, yeah, as I've been spinning this, I've kind of been calling it Desert Twilight because it's got the sunset colors, it's got a little bit of the blue of the daylight sky, and then it's got all of this black coming in of the night sky, right? So I'm gonna have to apply these together. And what I ended up doing is whenever I had it on my drum carder, as I pulled it off the drum carder, I just kind of like pulled it off in a spiral off the drum carder, if that makes sense. So that I ended up with like a really long strip of roving. Again, didn't do it very well. This is the first time I've done any of these things. So this is all very much like experimentation land. Yeah, first time I've really been dyeing fleece, spinning fleece. First time I've been, you know, blending colors on the drum carder. First time I've had a finished yarn in mind that I'm trying to create from nothing. And after I pulled it all off the drum carder and I had a big long strip of roving, then I divided it like I was going to do it for, like I'm doing a fractal spin. So we'll see how that turns out. So this one is the whole color sequence spun through once. This one is the whole color sequence spun through twice. And then I'm going to apply them together. And we'll see what happens. I'm pretty excited about this though. This has just been such a fun experiment. And seeing it come to fruition and, you know, learning about the best way to do these kind of things through trial and error as I go through it has been also super fun. I am hoping, you know, once I kind of like get a handle on what I'm doing, that I can start dyeing some fleece. And in addition to selling naturally dyed yarns in my Etsy shop, I can also sell naturally dyed roving. So that is the goal and the plan. I just need to kind of prove to myself that I know what I'm doing. So now I wanted to talk a little bit about my upcoming projects. So I've got this little basket back here, and this is the basket where I keep all of my yarns that are like on deck, right? It's like my next yarns that I'm gonna need. It's my, you know, yarn for my sweater hug, the extra skein that's already caked up. Yeah, I've got all sorts of projects in here. Okay. So let's just dive into this basket of wool, and I'll tell you what these things are for, which will lead into my life talk. So number one, I have this nice little indigo dyed worsted weight. I believe it's superwash. I dyed this forever ago. And I am planning to make a little bluebird of happiness out of this to send off in a little care package box. Which I need to do this week. I am doing a little swap with the Heather and Hops podcast Discord group. And yeah, I need to knit up a cute little bluebird to send off to my swapper. Okay, yeah, I've got my extra for my sweater hug. digging through here. I have got this, which is a skein of sock yarn that I dyed with chamisa with the intention of making a ranunculus out of it. I purchased a skein of mohair to go with it, and it was in this basket, and then this basket got knocked off of the shelf by a cat. All of the yarn fell all over the floor. The cat found the mohair and tangled it beyond all recognition. It is currently in my freezer, awaiting for me to feel the confidence to try and rewind the mohair. If you freeze mohair, it doesn't stick to itself as much. I'm not sure exactly why. It must be something with the scales. Whenever they get cold, they must close down or something. But yeah, if you ever need to rip out mohair or do anything like that, pop it in the freezer. It should help. Tip of the day. So that will go with this to make a ranunculus for myself. I have got some leftover yarn in here from a varpoo that I knit for a friend. So I've got this mohair, and this is also naturally dyed sock yarn that I dyed with avocado. And this is leftover from the sweater knit, and there's a lot left. So I decided I'm just going to make myself a nice little fuzzy hat. I think nothing special. I'll probably do like a sock head or a sock head style, and just hold the mohair and the fingering together, and just have a nice warm cozy hat. That's the plan for that. Still going. We've got some more for my sweater hug. Okay, here we go. This is some old Nitpicks deep stash from a shawl that I started knitting that I finally frogged. I believe this is Stroll. I have no idea what the name is. No idea. I want to call it Campfire, but I don't think that's right. Maybe it's Sunset or something. Who knows? Anyway, it's for socks. So either once I finish a pair of socks and I have my size 1 needles available, or I get around to ordering some new size 1 needles online, I'll cast on a sock. So that's next up sock-wise. And now we're getting into it a little bit. Okay, so I have a new project that I actually just cast on this morning. Like, maybe I should have considered it a whip, but I'm gonna rip it out. So this is as far as I made it. This is indigo dyed yarn that I dyed. This is going to be a infinity scarf, essentially. But I don't think I like the gauge. I think I want to go down in needle size. Right now I am on a size US 9, and it just feels a little bit too airy for me. I'd like it to be a little bit denser, so I think I'm going to go down to a size 8. And this is an alpaca wool blend that is tweed as well. Really, it's hard to see the tweed in there when it's been dyed so darkly with this blue, but there are little tweed nips in there. And this is going to be for a coworker. Our bookkeeper at work is moving on to another job, which is very sad. We all really like her. And she is a master weaver, I think. She used to weave professionally. So I figured, and she used to weave professionally for a naturally dyed yarn shop. So I'm like, okay, if anybody deserves some naturally dyed knitting, it's her. So I'm knitting her a little going away gift. I've got 3 skeins of this. And my plan is to make, let me find it. There it is. This lovely thing from Kate Davies, the Highland Rogue. And yeah, without showing you the pattern. Here's some more pictures. Very pretty. I have made this pattern before also as a gift knit, and I really, really loved knitting it. It was just like such a nice meditative pattern. And I was trying to pick something to make for my coworker who's leaving, and yeah, I decided to use this yarn, and then I was like, well, what can I make out of it? And I was looking all on Ravelry, and I couldn't find anything that I really loved. And I was like, oh yeah, I made this before, and it was great. So I'm doing it again. The thing with this is I have an Aran weight yarn, and this calls for Kate Davies' own yarn. And I don't know how to pronounce it, so I'm not even going to try. Which I think it's a sport or a DK, I think it's DK. Anywho, so I think it's supposed to be for a DK. I have an Aran weight. It calls for you to use a US 8 needle, which I said, well, my yarn is thicker, I'm going to go up to a 9, and I cast on a few less stitches to sort of adjust for that. But now that I've gotten a few rows into it, it does just look too airy. So I think I'm going to tear it out and then go back down to the 8. Yeah. So I'll just be working on that. And that kind of brings me to my life stuff. Look at that. Beautiful. So my life stuff, I have decided to be a little bit crazy, and I'm gonna go to the UK in the spring, and I'm gonna hike the West Highland Way. It's the first time I ever heard about it was from Kate Davies, and you know, I used to read her blog all the time. Like, I just wanted to be a Scottish knitwear designer whenever I grew up. Like, that was my goal. I loved everything that she does, and I really, really loved her blog and her story of being a young stroke survivor and using knitting to help her gain her mobility back. And she always goes out and hikes and walks and lives right along the West Highland Way. And she and her husband put together this book, which is his photography and her patterns. And it takes you through the whole walk of the West Highland Way. And it tells you all of this background history and all of these stories about where you walk along, you know, there's all of these, you know, Scottish and Gaelic poems and things. Very, very cool. So I felt inspired, bought some plane tickets. Now I'm doing it. Yeah, so that's my big life thing. This is the big thing that's coming up in my life, is the big UK trip and hiking the West Highland Way. It is 96 miles long. I'm going to take 8 days to hike it, which is pretty leisurely, pretty leisurely. Most people do it in 5 to 7. I just didn't want to kill myself. And like, let's enjoy the scenery and like stop and knit on a rock for a while or something. So yes, that is happening. So now I'm starting to think, oh gosh, I need knitwear to wear while I'm hiking. So next up, I am going to knit a vest out of this. I bought this yarn at the at Vogue Knitting Live 2020. Very barely pre-COVID. January of 2020. And this is from Green Mountain Spinnery. The colorway is Olivera, and it is their Lana line, I believe is what it's called. It's a fingering weight. It's a pretty heavy fingering weight, I think. this is only 400 yards per skein, so I think it's going to bloom up like quite well. Yeah, so I had earmarked this yarn for a different knitting project, but honestly, I just kind of don't really want to knit that anymore. My tastes have changed since then. My practicality for knitwear has changed since then. I leave the house a lot less than I did back then, as we all do. Yeah, so I have a pattern picked out for this. It's called Sleeveless. It is by somebody whose name I can't pronounce. And it seems like a nice, practical, it's going to be hard wearing vest that I can wear while I'm hiking, because it will be the beginning of May in the Scottish Highlands and it's still going to be a little bit chilly. So yeah, I need a vest. And I also need things that aren't going to take up a lot of space. So I think this is going to pack down pretty well as a vest. I have another vest that I could probably take that's fingering weight. I'm thinking that mohair and that gray mohair and fingering hat that I was thinking of making would be great to take, because that'll be like extra warm, but it'll be super lightweight and I can just like scrunch it down into my bag. So yeah, I'm starting to think about those kinds of things. Yeah, so that's really exciting. I'm also going to spend a couple of days in Glasgow, a couple of days in London, a couple of days in Iceland, a couple of days in Washington, D.C. So yeah, I'm just going to go all over the place. I don't know, you know, one of those moments where it's just like, you know what? I ain't getting any younger. Let's do it. Let's just do it. So I'm doing it. I have been working out now to try and prepare for this. I've been getting out on some more hikes with my dogs, although with the snow, that looks like it's about 1.5 feet of snow. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to get out with them for a while. But I have been on some hikes lately. I went down to the Rio Grande Gorge with them and did a little hike. And then the next weekend, I took them to Divisadero Peak and we climbed a mountain. Definitely one of the smallest mountains around here. I don't even know if, I mean, it's a peak, so I guess it's a mountain. But yeah, it was about 1,200 feet, 1,300 feet of elevation gain on that hike, which really, it was a challenge. And I've got a lot bigger days than that on the trail in Scotland. So yeah, just got to keep at it, keep getting stronger, keep walking further, keep getting out there in the woods and getting out there on the mesa and enjoying nature and the outdoors and getting my dogs out to fun places. So I did take some footage on both of those hikes, which I will put here at the end. I hope you guys enjoy it. Yeah, so I think that really is it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you guys are keeping warm and cozy, or keeping cool if you're down in the Southern Hemisphere. Yeah, we are gonna not leave the house today. Maybe not leave the house tomorrow, depending how bad the snow still is. I might have kind of a hard time getting out of my driveway. Yeah, so we are definitely still in the depths of winter here. But that's fine. That's fine. Plenty of time to rest, plenty of time to knit. I don't really have much natural dyeing I can do right now because my dye studio is my back porch. I do have rainwater catchment where I collect rainwater to use for my dyeing. And I have like a big, like 275 gallon like tank, and it is a frozen block. So yeah, we're not going to be doing any large scale dyeing outside for the foreseeable future. I can do some small scale stuff inside to do like solar dyeing in the window, but that's really like 1 or 2 skeins at a time. So yeah, right now we're still in winter. We're still in hibernation. We're in planning mode. We're in making mode. And yeah, making plans for the rest of the year, anticipating big trips in the spring, COVID notwithstanding. Yeah. So again, thank you for joining me. I hope to see you next time. Do subscribe if you want to be notified for that. I try to do these about once a month. And yeah, I will see you guys soon. Stay cozy. Bye.